Lions just recovered a fumble.
Bits of WIS-TIM.
It's Harry Houdini, I'm pretty sure.
That's when it kind of becomes Home Improvement After Dark.
I guess that leaves us at the question of the week.
Very good. I don't know if you noticed, Jordan, but a really cool aerial shot of the table. Reasonably funny.
User review.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Home Impodcast time.
That's right, a company that always shares its cheese milk with Binford Tools is proud to present a Home Improvement Podcast. My name is Adam, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jordan. Jordan, how you doing this morning?
Cheese milk.
Yeah. Did you have cheese milk on Easter?
I didn't. That was one of the things that I asked people to bring, but they just didn't. They didn't want to do it. So.
That's family. Always letting you down when you need them the most.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're known for.
Yeah.
Did you have a good Easter?
It was good. Yeah. Like I noted last week, it was my girlfriend's birthday in addition to Easter. So
double Easter party.
It was just a huge day for us. No, we opened some gifts here and did some celebrating, and then we headed up to visit her mom and her boyfriend, and we had a nice meal. I was telling you before the show aired, found myself in a situation that you really rarely find yourself in when you host a home improvement podcast, and that was we were sitting at the dinner table for a fine Easter dinner of ham and cheesy potatoes and green beans and
what else did you have?
Perhaps other things that I can't remember. And someone at the table noted that, and she was an older woman, perhaps 60 onward, we'll say. And she was talking, she was conversing, and she noted, I don't know how it came up, that Home Improvement was one of her favorite shows. And
you don't know how it came up. You asked her. If it was.
I said, do you like Home Improvement? No, I swear, I was very quiet. I was eating politely. She was just somehow talking about shows, and she said Home Improvement was one of her favorite shows. And if I had a nickel every time someone had said that since we started the podcast, I'd have one nickel. I was sitting there, and she started to kind of talk about Home Improvement, and my girlfriend and I kind of locked eyes, and I shook my head so as to say, "Please don't bring up the podcast. Please don't bring up the podcast, please." And she brought up the podcast, and I don't know that this woman she necessarily knew what podcasts were, but she was receptive. She was talking about just how funny she thought the show was, and how she really liked Tim and the characters. And I don't know if we got a new listener per se.
Sounds like we might have,
but we've got, there are fans of the show still out there. And just because we don't necessarily always hear from them or see them, it doesn't mean they don't exist. So it was kind of an Easter miracle, I would say.
That was the Easter miracle. I mean, yeah. I guess, that goes to show we just need to get our podcast into places that we wouldn't think of, and that's how we're going to get new listeners. So yeah, like Easter, like tables on Easter. Yeah, so every Easter, that's our big recruiting ground.
Yeah, they had an Alexa, they had whatever the Amazon streaming thing, and I wanted to say, Alexa, play Home and Podcast pilot, but
I don't know that would work. Do you think it would? I mean, I have whenever I Google Home and Podcast. Yeah. Whenever I Google Home and Podcast just to see how our ranking is on Google, it says that I'm spelling podcast wrong. So I imagine that Alexa wouldn't do very well.
For the record, you do that 4 times a day? You Google Home and Podcast?
I mean, upwards of 6.
Yeah. You do it after you Google yourself.
Yeah, I'm very interested in
Jordan that. Lyons, St. Cloud, Jordan Lyons, Davis.
I just want to see what people are saying about me,
I remember when, this is a major tangent, we will get off the intro relatively soon. I remember when you first were able to, I don't know, if I remember when Google first became a thing, but, when people first kind of started considering, Googling themselves, I was maybe, I don't know if I was 13 or 14 or something, and I would, Google Adam Dietz, Davison, and, I was 14, so there was obviously nothing there, but I would do it fairly often just to see if anyone had written anything about me or anything, just some kind of a big piece, whether it be in the Journal or the Freep or even the Davison Index, but it never came.
I bet you when you got into high school you had some stuff in there.
Yeah,
for
but it was
football, maybe.
Well, yeah, more than some stuff. Yes. Yeah, I mean, if you call it like weekly photo spreads, some stuff. Jordan, how was your Easter? Quickly.
Quickly, it was good. We had about 12 or 15 people. We had 12 or 15, no in between either, just one of those two numbers. We had quite a few people. We kind of host everyone who is a transplant to Central Florida, so lots of...
You take in the people that nobody else wants.
That's right, and they all showed up this time. They had to eat some honey-baked ham, and we played a bunch of games. We played Sushi Go, if you've ever heard of that, and it was a good old-fashioned time.
You're trying to tell me you had 12 or 15 people and not one of them brought cheese milk?
Not one of them. I asked every single one, and they all looked at me really weird. Kind of like when you told that older lady that you had a podcast, and she looked at you weird. It was that kind of feedback. Yeah, sure, yeah. That was quite a thing. My jaw dropped, and she even knew. She's talking about how it was on the Hallmark Channel, and I'm thinking like. This is our prime target.
Yeah,
right
you
here.
are our demographic. She's a classy lady. I'll say that much. She had an air of sophistication about her, and which made me all the more surprised that she liked Home Improvement. But
I was gonna say,
yeah, she was definitely a classy type. Jordan, I think
speaking of classy segments,
I think it's time we maybe do something we haven't done in a while. So back by popular demand. Hey, Jordan, can you cue those grunts?
Sure, it's all safe to me. Oh, no.
Now it's time for Bits of Wisdom.
This week's Bit of Wisdom comes from Tim Allen's stand-up entitled Unknown. Use a screwdriver instead of a hammer. Try to untighten the nut with your hand. Utilize the path of least resistance first. This has been your Bit of Wisdom.
Wise words right there.
Not so bad, yeah. Go into the Tim Allen one-liners and stand-up well, or basically just Tim Allen quotes. It's a Tim Allen quote website. I'm going to be utilizing it. There's some raunchy ones, so these may get into NSFW territory relatively soon, but I wanted to choose something kind of, I don't know, ponderous, for lack of a better word, something you could really sink your teeth into, and I think that kind of did it. What did that mean to you, Jordan?
It reminded me of a book I read that was placed in kind of Japanese culture where they were talking about the elements and they were talking about water, and that's how water works. It kind of takes the path of least resistance to get where it's going, and it's flexible and it molds to whatever surroundings are around it. So just really emphasize that point.
Much better answer than I expected when I tossed that your way. So good on you. You're sharp as a tack. What are we covering this week, Jordan?
We are covering, this is our 42nd episode of Home Improvement, Home Impodcast, Bye Birdie. And this was written by Susan Estelle Jansen. She last wrote your favorite scene. Last episode was Bell Bottom Blues. You remember Jill dancing a little bit?
How could I ever forget?
This is her actual last episode that she's going to write in the whole series. So,
well, I can say with certainty that it is better than that last episode where Jill is a Woodstock hippie. So yeah,
that is good. This aired February 17th, 1993. The title references a musical and popular film from 1963, which I've never seen, but I've heard of, starring Dick Van Dyke and Margaret. And the song Anne Margaret sings, I believe at the start, is Bye Bye Birdie, which I know from a Mad Men episode.
Yeah. Refresh my memory.
They try to incorporate a advertisement that is based on the song that she sings in the 60s because everyone knew it. It was very popular, so they try to make it their own in like a Pepsi commercial or something. So they copy the tone and all of the the way it's acted out and everything. So
okay. Yeah. Interesting, very interesting. Do we have anything from our dearest Tony Topola?
We do. We've got a lengthy one, so get ready for it.
All right.
A woodpecker keeps Tim awake at night. He's trying hard to get rid of it, but Mark has been feeding it and named it Pete. Brad tries to fake sick in order to be able to stay home because his math homework is not done since Jennifer used to do it until she refused and Brad broke up with her. When Brad flunks in math, Randy suggests that he tell Jill that Jennifer left him and he's depressed because of it. This works until Jennifer turns up and Jill learns the truth. Tim and Jill have to teach Brad, and they find out that multiplying compound fractions is not as easy as they thought it would be. In tool time, Tim demonstrates how to lay a new floor. Tim has one of his genius ideas regarding how to scrape off the old floor with the usual results. So thank you, Tony.
Talking about usual results, I mean, that's Tony Topola to a capital T. Whew. So that's a doozy. Do we have any plot keywords?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, I'll start with dry ice.
Super soaker?
Compound fractions.
Owl.
Thermometer.
Last one, Binford Blastmaster.
Hey. That should be your nickname.
The Blastmaster?
The Binford Blastmaster.
We'll see if it sticks.
All right. So I think we're good to go. One thing I do want to note before we get into this, just so that people can kind of have some context here. This is the last appearance of Jessica Wesson as Jennifer Zdarsky.
No.
So she'll never be back. We still have Karn coming up. Her last appearance is nearing. I think it's in the last episode of this season. But this is the last we're ever going to see of Jennifer Zdarsky.
She goes out with a bang.
Well, maybe, in some sense, I suppose.
Or a whimper.
Yeah, it depends on perspective, I guess. But, all right, let's get into it. You want to start things off?
Yeah, so we're going to open... This is perhaps a different opening scene than we've seen before. It's not the kitchen. It's not tool time. It's in bed. It must be early morning because there's just a little bit of light. And Tim and Jill are asleep, and there is a woodpecker just making a ruckus outside. And Tim wakes up Jill, but she thinks it's him farting from some bean dip. So some good flatulent jokes there, as usual. Tim goes to the window, opens it up, and yells at the bird. And the Home Improvement logo, because it just has to do so many different things, it's just chilling on the windowsill.
Yeah, that was actually kind of cool, because it was just, they really subtle. They weren't trying to make a big thing out of it. Like, if you blink your eyes, you're going to miss that logo.
Yeah, it was more of like a Finding logo. Maybe they've turned it into sort of like a Where's Waldo type of thing at this point.
I guess
don't know.
we were both pretty successful, because I definitely spotted it.
I'm looking for it every time now, so that helps. But the bird stops momentarily, but as soon as Tim gets back to the bed, it goes at it again, and Tim tries to take a robe and shoo it away. It gets caught in the gutter, and it pulls down, so he's ruining things. This woodpecker is really a nuisance. Mm-hmm. This scene gets even better and more logical, because Tim leaves. Jill gets up, dazed and confused, runs to the window and shuts it because it must be cold outside. Tim comes back with a broom, and he walks into the window with such force that it shatters.
He walks back with a gun.
Was it a gun?
Yeah, it's a gun.
I thought it was a broom. Either way, he's like walking normally, but somehow it's with such force that it shatters the window.
I think it's supposed to be, or I think maybe what they're setting up is it's like a massive like shotgun. It's like an Elmer Fudd kind of illusion, I suspect, because he's like kind of tiptoeing up, and he's got he does. The gun breaks the window. I think that's what they were trying to. But whether it's a gun or it's a broom, it's an odd start just to have Jill close the window and Tim not notice that it's closed. What you didn't mention is Tim is he's dressed very sexy in the scene. Short boxers.
You would notice this.
The tank top. I mean, a lot of skin being shown. That's all I'm saying. And I think that's maybe how they're bringing in some of the female audience back then.
Sure.
And us.
And you, for sure.
Me, currently, yeah.
You're all about the scenes where, like, the boys take down his pants.
How dare you? I'm not all about that.
All right, let's move on to the next scene, unless you have anything else to say.
No, not really. Didn't
you think it was strange that the window broke because he was tiptoeing?
The barrel of the gun would be pretty...
You'd have to run to break through a window, though.
Maybe, I don't know. Certainly, we don't know a lot about this, but I think there's been advancements in Windows over the past, 25 years or something. I think maybe, we have double paned windows now, whereas back then the windows were weaker. I don't know. I think on Home Improvement, this is pretty logical. These kind of things happen with regularity, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time thinking about the logistics of it, but yeah, it was an interesting start. The ramifications of which are not really discussed. But
I just feel like I've seen several movies where the thing is they run into the window and they fall backwards or something because the door's shut and they didn't see it. But in this case, he's like tiptoeing and somehow it shatters. So that's
maybe the other movies are wrong and this is right.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to attempt it ourselves and see what happens.
Yeah, we'll put it on Vine.
Vine's discontinued.
Yeah, that is true.
We'll Periscope it.
We'll Periscope it. Finally, we have an excuse to use Periscope. Next scene, morning after. Brad...
or same morning.
Say it again?
Go ahead.
I hope it was worth it. Next morning, Brad comes down and he's feigning fever. It's pretty obvious right away that he's faking. He's doing a whiny voice, and there's a couple different things going on kind of at the same time. So Brad's doing that. Everybody kind of comes downstairs at the same time. You ever notice that on Home Improvement? Like, everybody kind of comes into the room at the exact same moment. I don't know. Tim also enters as well, and he's looking for a slingshot. He asks Randy if he can use his, but Randy got it taken away because he pelted Harold Hansen in the butt with it. Mark, everybody's getting something to do here. Mark has named the woodpecker Pete, and he wants to feed it. So Tim and Mark are kind of having a back and forth at the same time. Everybody kind of disperses. Brad admits to Randy that he is faking, and he comes up with what I would say is an ingenious plan. He's going to stick the thermometer in tepid, lukewarm coffee that's in the sink, which would have no real. It wouldn't be that warm. This is where we find out that Brad and Jennifer Zdarsky broke up, and I didn't know that this was coming, and
my heart broke.
They broke up, and my heart broke. And I thought that this might be it. Like, I didn't know she was going to come into this episode, and I was thinking, man, what a lame ending. Like, that's how you're going to treat her after all she's done for this show.
But don't worry, she gets a little bit more to do.
She gets a little more to do. Her treatment isn't that much better, though. Brad's sticking the thermometer in the coffee, and they're talking or whatever, and then Jill enters, and he quickly pulls it out and puts it in his mouth, and he acts like it would burn him, but the temperature of this coffee just wouldn't be that warm.
That's not what Jill says when she takes it out.
I know, it's supposed to be 108 degrees, but, like, I don't know. It seems like if you've had coffee and you've had it in the morning, I'm kind of a temperature expert, as people are noting, and you've had it sitting out, and then you're done with it, and you put it in the sink, and it's just like sitting in the sink, and this is just like.
Was she done with it? I thought it was on the counter. I don't know.
See, I thought it was in the sink.
See, that might be the problem there. I think it was still on the counter, and maybe Jill was just starting to drink it. Also, you said you were a temperature expert. I did a little bit of research on temperature just to figure out what exactly would happen if your brain was or if your body was putting out 108 degrees.
Yeah.
Brain damage usually results at this temperature. 106 degrees and over is usually a sign of heat stroke and convulsions. So really, his problem was just keeping it in the coffee too long.
Yeah, so he should have just dipped it in really quickly.
Yeah, for a couple seconds and got it up to like 101, 102.
Here's another thing I'm thinking, though. So if the coffee is really that hot and she's drinking it, it would, like, burn her mouth.
That's why she just left it there.
I mean, I make coffee every day. I've been making coffee every day for 10 years. I've never made it, poured it, and then had to, like, wait for it to not burn my mouth. That's why the pots exist. They regulate that.
To be fair, I've never had coffee, so...
I've never had coffee.
This is all natural pep, baby.
Yeah.
I also wanted to say that Randy, in the morning, I usually watch TV or listen to a podcast or something. Randy's checking out the latest edition of a magazine, and I was wondering, what magazine do you think it is?
I mean, Randy seems really interested in making money off of his family this season, so maybe like Forbes?
Forbes, yeah. I was thinking like
Sports Illustrated for Kids.
That's what Sports Illustrated for Kids,
with Buzz Beamer.
Didn't they have a Nickelodeon Junior or something?
Yeah, I used to get that.
I used to get that too.
Freaking funny.
What did you did you have like a ritual before you went to school of something that you watched every morning when you were a kid?
Yeah, it's really funny you asked this because I feel like I think about this quite a bit. I do.
Why?
It would. Why does anyone think about anything? It would vary. I remember when I was young. Well, it also like would depend on.
It changed because sometimes they would change the programming, or you would have to change when you went to school.
School started at different times. So when I was young, I remember it being the Munsters for quite a while when I was really young, like grade school. I think I would watch the Munsters in the morning. Then, as I got older, it became Different Strokes for whatever reason.
You and I have very different rituals.
Which is why I incorporate. Which is why I have the knowledge of Different Strokes from recall our trade deadline episode with Mr. Drummond and whatnot. Then it became like, as I got older, it would be a mixture of like local news, like ABC 12 morning stuff, Karen Gatlin, Michael J. Thorpe, those folks, and then I would flip it over to SportsCenter. By the time I graduated high school, I was watching SportsCenter, trying to get those top 10 plays at.
Why were you watching ABC 12 News? You just wanted to stay abreast of the local.
Well, yeah, it's local stuff, Jordan. I mean, it's our community.
I've never been a big fan of local news, but certainly
not now. But I think it's a product of my parents watching. I think my dad probably had it on. I would watch it, and then I would change it to SportsCenter.
I usually got ready by myself. When I was younger, my brothers were there sometimes, but for the most part, they had different hours because they were in a different school or graduated. My mom worked third shift, so if she got home, she went to bed, and my dad usually was gone, or maybe he didn't wake up yet. I don't remember which. His schedule might have been a little bit later than mine, but either way, he wasn't watching anything with me. So when I was younger, it was Pokemon a lot of that for sure, and then when I was a little bit older, it was still Pokemon a lot, but then Recess came on. So I'd watch that quite a bit, and then I did bounce between SportsCenter, which is funny now because I don't know.
SportsCenter.
I never watched SportsCenter.
Yeah.
So
I think I always wanted to see the top 10 plays before I went to school. That was one thing I always thought of. But yeah, my dad was a teacher, so we always left around the same time. So that was less solitary than your kind of lonely.
My lonely existence.
Me and
Pikachu.
Yeah, that's fair. You were just part of the gang with Ash and Misty and Brock and Jordan. All right, back to the app. Where even were we? Okay.
We talked about the temperature. And this is at this point, Brad leaves to finish getting ready for school, and Jill asks Randy, "What's going on? Like, what's going on with Brad? Why is he trying to fake temperature or whatever?" And Randy spills the beans pretty quickly. He says that Jennifer and him broke up, and Jill thinks that he must be devastated and that he's depressed. He doesn't want to go.
Well, Randy kind of covers for Brad because he has the opportunity to kind of make it clear that Brad broke up with her for the stupid reason of her, which the fact Brad broke up with her because she wouldn't let him copy her homework anymore. And Randy could have spilled the beans, so he was actually kind of covering for his brother. He does. He makes it known, or he lets Jill think that Brad was dumb.
Here's my theory with Randy in this episode. He does help his brother, but he only does so because he knows this plan will fall apart at some point, and he wants to see the world burn. He's
like the Joker in The Dark Knight,
And also, when he does cover for his brother here, he's kind of doing it sarcastically. So if Jill knew anything about her son, she would know that he's joking.
Oh, these kids are the worst liars in the world. I mean, anytime their parents believe their lies, it's always the least believable thing that happens in the show because it's so obvious that they're hiding something. But I guess Jill buys it. So yeah, that's. I guess the scene continues, and Randy leaves, and Jill continues to kind of feel bad, and Tim enters, and he keeps talking about the woodpecker, and they converse a little bit, and that's basically it for this.
You
scene.
Forgot to mention that the bus honked again, and then
I wrote that down. I just didn't see it. Yeah, the bus driver does honk again.
The most understanding bus driver of all time.
She's just come on, guys, let's go. Waiting on you. It's like, those kids would get left every day.
I did also want to say that when Jill and Tim talk about, Brad being broken up with. Tim doesn't really care. He just says, like, he's 12, which is a really good point. And Jill is like, oh, it's his first love. And
she's always meddling, though. It's because she's unfulfilled, like, she's always trying to... Yeah, I mean, I get maybe it's good parenting. I don't know, but it also is not that big of a deal at all. And she'll get burned when she finds out what happened. Side yard. We open with Tim on a ladder, but quickly Jordan, and this is pretty good. We have a bird's eye view. I mean, we have
the pecker eye view.
That's the shot. That's the camera shot, but it's also literally a bird's eye view. So clever filmmaking here. I wrote bird's eye view LOL because it's just it's ironic.
It is hilarious.
The irony. Tim is he's got like an air horn and he's trying to get the bird off by using that. There's some talk of whether or not they should call a professional. I don't know if it's an exterminator. I guess it is.
That's what they say.
I'm not sure that they would get birds off of
I did
ledges,
some Googling. There seems to be some crossover for Orkin. Orkin does a little bit of pest and also bird control. So.
Hey, Orkin, man.
Exactly.
So Tim doesn't need a professional, though, clearly. So after he's
got a great idea. He's going to hook the air horn up to the compressor. So he goes... Jill and him leave to go get that. Brad comes through the Taylor Trail.
He emerges from the Taylor Trail. Got that, yep.
Mm-hmm. Brad says he's failed another math test and he's screwed.
I was thinking a good season 3 plot line would be about Brad getting an IEP or Brad transitioning into special ed classes because it seems like that's where we're headed.
He's struggling, that's for sure. He needs some significant help. Randy tells him to milk the lovesick angle because he's already set it up for him. And Tim comes out with the compressor, the Binford Blastmaster, which I mentioned earlier. It's going to boost out 2,000 decibels. I did some research on this, too, just to fact-check it. It turns out that 150 decibels is the sound of a jet engine, so that seems a bit impossible to me.
So it's like 2,000 jet engines? Something.
Not great fact-checking by the Home Improvement guys there, but... No. Randy, I also made a note here. I just said Randy is on fire this episode.
It's really funny when Tim puts on these headphones and Randy's like burning him. Yeah.
Yes. So like you said, Tim puts on the headphones and Randy says it's a great idea, and Tim can't hear him, so he says repeat it, and Randy says you look like a big doofus or something.
Tim just kind of thumbs up. Yeah.
He says all right,
got it. I like that. Yeah.
So last episode we talked about Randy kind of being a little mean. He turned it back on to his usual self here, and he's back to normal, which is good.
Turned down for what,
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
So inside, Jill is on the phone with the exterminator, trying to get somebody to come out. She doesn't want them to kill the bird, but they seem pretty insistent that the only thing they could possibly do is kill the bird.
Which is not true.
Not true. And then they hang up on her. So she must have called the wrong exterminator there. Just not great service. Brad and Randy are in the living room, and... They start putting on some good acting here, and by good I mean terrible.
Yeah, again, like if Jill can't see through this, then she's maybe not fit to be a mother. I mean, this is the most phony conversation I've ever heard. But
yeah, so Brad, he's acting like he's really upset, and he doesn't want to talk about Jennifer and all this kind of stuff, and he gets Jill to get him some milk and cookies.
Yeah, definitely.
So he uses it to his best advantage, and then Jill, She's trying to get him to open up about it, and she says, you're going to find someone who's way better than Jennifer just when Jennifer walks in.
There's a knock at the door. I think they have a doorbell. Jennifer enters, and I'm wondering if this is her last appearance, because all of a sudden, she's a giant compared to Brad. She's so tall, and maybe they were just like, we can't have this kind of a height.
Looks like she's 16. She's too tall.
She looks way too old. Yeah, it's like, since the last time we saw her, she is like 10 inches taller. It's crazy. She's way taller than Brad. So yeah, they're having a conversation, and Jennifer brought Brad's workbook over, which I'm not, why she would do him that courtesy, I'm not necessarily sure. But Brad is trying to talk to Jennifer so as to kind of further the lies. He wants his mom to kind of overhear. So he's like, I don't remember exactly what he says, but it's like, Jennifer, I miss you, or like something along those lines, like trying to paint himself as kind of the victim. But Jennifer very quickly is like, no, Bradley, you broke up with me because you couldn't do my homework anymore. And then Jill hears it, and Jennifer leaves, and cat's out the bag, yo.
Yeah, that lasted for like 20 seconds. They
did not milk this very long. No.
So yeah, he doesn't get to play up the angle any longer. Jill comes around the corner and she is miffed. She calls him Bradley Michael Taylor, so he gets the full name treatment there.
Yeah.
Brad tries to continue like his charade, but obviously she doesn't care.
Jill says, "Shut up, shut up, Brad.
Shut up, Brad." And luckily, Brad doesn't have to deal with this anymore because Tim tries out the air horn upgrade and shakes the whole house and pictures and everything. So that kind of ends that conversation.
Yeah, sure does. Yeah, the photos fall off the wall. Everything vibrates. It's
even the camera starts vibrating.
Yes, it's very good. Very, very good.
Just as it's the opposite of the bird's eye, camera angle.
I love that, but that was less into. So yeah, that takes us into a commercial break, and then we're back inside, and I'm trying to figure out what exactly happens here. I have a lot of different notes here. This is where Tim comes in, and he's failed again, and he notes that the bird is at the Walter Lantz Clinic.
Well, he says he got rid of the bird.
Oh, he thinks he got rid of the bird, and he's at the Walter Lantz Clinic. IMDb trivia. Tim calls the woodpecker Woody and refers to Walter Lantz, the creator of Woody Woodpecker.
Bam.
So that's the Walter Lantz Clinic. I like the idea that Tim is knowledgeable enough about animation to know about the originator of Woody Woodpecker. It's very highbrow.
One of his idols, probably.
It's a deep cut. So because I wrote that down, I wondered what the reference was, and here it is answered. Brad tries to kind of put the blame on his parents for their excitement when he got a B a couple weeks ago, and I thought this is one of the few times where I was sort of surprised. I thought that they were going to go down this road, and there was going to be a sentimental moment where they're like, "Oh, Brad, we just love you for who you are," but they're very much like, "Yeah, okay,
shut up, we don't buy it."
Yeah, that's BS. They're fake crying. Then the conversation kind of turns into what Brad's struggling with, and we find out that it's compound fractions. And Tim and Jill kind of resign themselves to teaching Brad on their own.
Before that, Brad says, "When am I going to use compound fractions?"
Oh yeah,
and Jill comes up with a very bad fake reason. It is basically making cheese milk.
She says she gets a certain amount of
cheese and multiplies it by the number of milk, and that's how you make cheese milk.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
They're gonna teach him how to do it, but they sit down at the table, and it's a little bit more complicated than they remember. Although when they're describing it, I don't think it sounds that complicated.
Compound fractions, it's like the kind of thing where, so when Brad says that, am I ever gonna need to use this? It's
maybe
I don't know. It's yes and no for stuff like this, because it's the same thing. It's you don't need to I took trigonometry in high school. I'm sure you did too. I don't need that. I don't use that. But you do need a basic sense of adding and subtracting and multiplying. It's just a helpful way to go through life, being able to kind of understand at the very least money. So I was thinking compound fractions.
Well, I think people now, I use it in baking sometimes, but even then it's not multiplication, it's usually addition or, subtraction or something. And, they kind of go on and use it a little bit more in building. But I think nowadays people use decimals more than fractions, and there's such things as calculators, so that's kind of an issue.
There were calculators then, Jordan.
Are you sure?
Yeah, for sure. 1993, they had them.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, he kind of has a point, but yeah, you need to know how to do the basic of this stuff, and it kind of builds on itself. And depending on what career you're going in, you might use more of that stuff. If you're in physics or something, you're going to use it more than you would if you are recording a podcast about home improvement.
I think it's safe to say Brad's not going into physics.
Are you sure?
Writing seems to be on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Jill kind of, they both are working on it. Jill gives over the responsibility to Tim, and he can't do it. And then he starts cheating by looking at their papers when they're all working on it together and all that kind of stuff. So it just reinforces that, things, after you haven't done it for 20, 30 years, you might forget. And the woodpecker comes back and helps him finish the math problem somehow.
Yeah, he goes 8 times 3, which, if you don't know 8 times 3,
you're in trouble.
I think you are in trouble. He says 23, and then the woodpecker pecks, and he says 24. And then Tim's kind of like, what the heck's going on here?
Maybe this woodpecker isn't so bad after all.
What's the deal with this woodpecker? I think they should have brought the woodpecker inside, added him to the reoccurring cast, given him a voice, kind of like a Salem in Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Really could have been some hijinks.
Yeah, they really missed an opportunity.
And
there.
Introducing Leo, the woodpecker, and it's voiced by like Brad Garrett or something. Hey Tim, what are you doing?
Oh man, a lot of missed opportunities in this episode.
Yeah, they could have cast a babysitter last week. They could have cast a woodpecker this week. I'm just trying to change up the show a little bit.
They refuse. Instead, they're going to do something that they do every episode. So they're going to do the opposite of changing up. And they're going to go ahead and go outside where Tim and Wilson are. So let's go ahead and play our first clip of the episode.
Hi-ho, neighbor.
Hi, Wilson.
My, that's an awfully big water pistol.
Trying to get rid of that woodpecker up there on the roof.
Why don't you try an owl? The owl is the natural enemy of the woodpecker.
That's just what I need up there, an owl. Then it wouldn't be tap, tap, tap. It'd be tap, tap, tap. Ooh, tap, tap, tap. Ooh, tap, tap, tap. Ooh.
Well, it worked for Motown. Actually, you don't need a real owl. A wooden owl will do the trick.
I'll try it. I tried everything else.
I see your son Brad is assiduously poring over his academic tomes.
He's what? Oh, yeah, he's studying. Hey, Wilson, do you know how to multiply compound fractions?
Of course I do, Tim. I love mathematics. It's one of the building blocks of thought. Nothing teaches order and discipline better. You know what Galileo Galilei said.
Yeah, sure. 1601 Florence. Why do both of my names sound the same?
No, he said the universe is written in the language of mathematics. Its characters are triangles, circles, other geometric figures. Without mathematics, one wanders about in a dark labyrinth.
Labyrinth?
Let's just say a maze.
I know I am. I want Brad to be a good student. So I told him that multiplying compound fractions is a real important part of that. But, between you and me, it's kind of useless information.
Well, I don't know about that, Tim. There was a time when I thought my extensive research into ancient tribal cultures, obscure scientific data, the thoughts of great philosophers would never come in handy. Then you moved in.
All right, so Wilson has some practical advice here for the woodpecker. He says get a wooden owl that might scare the woodpecker off their natural enemies. He talks a little bit about the importance of math and some historical examples with Galileo and such. But really, Wilson makes it very applicable. He says, when Tim is saying, is all this stuff worthless? Like, is he ever going to use math? And Wilson says, I don't know. I didn't think I would ever use all this research that I've done about ancient cultures and history until I moved next door to you, Tim. So you just never know when it's going to come in handy.
It's true. Yeah, it's a short segment. It doesn't really give any advice per se. But,
besides the owl,
yeah. Well, I mean that's
we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out. It's pleasant enough the interaction here. I don't have much more to say. And I did think the whole thing with I didn't think I'd use my research and studies until you moved in was a humorous bit, a little bit of winking, meta commentary, if you will. And I will. Next scene. Where are we? We're on Tool Time. The Tool Time is not being utilized very well this season.
No.
I gotta say. It's as if they feel a sense to force a scene in there where something, physical. There's some physical comedy that happens, but this is an example of just a poorly kind of, I don't know, just not a great scene.
Filler scene.
Yeah, definitely. So, and feel free to jump in terms of what they're actually doing here. A scroll saw is being used. They use a scroll saw to make some kind of cabinetry for Al's mom's teacup collection. Mm-hmm. And then Tim, this is about the weirdest joke you could do. Tim says, yeah, well, what about your mom's D-cup collection? He pulls out like an old kind of gross-looking bra. and the audience, they like started like just like really whooping it up, and I can imagine people in the audience, they're like peeing themselves, they're laughing so hard, they just seem to love it. I don't know.
Do you think like somebody who works for the show had to go out and buy a giant bra, or did Tim do it himself? Like they had to set up for this joke.
I think Tim went and bought it at like a Goodwill or something, which is disgusting. No, it's a really weird joke, and though maybe even stranger than the joke is how much people seem to really be into it. It's like, nasty old bra.
We know the crowd is always amicable towards the Tool Time or really Home Improvement jokes in general. So they're willing participants at almost every time. Wouldn't it be funny though if you like heard them boo?
Like, you're a hack. Bring back that woodpecker. Hey everybody, it's me, Frank Garrett. All right.
No.
So somehow they transitioned from a scroll saw to laying a new floor. Is there any relationship between the two? I don't think so, right?
I don't think so. I think they're just working on a new floor. They talk about measuring square feet, and
so let me ask you this before we go any further. Do you think that they just like? Do you think someone in the writer's room, the room of one person, was like, oh, teacup and D cup rhyme. Let's set something up around that. Because that kind of is what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, because the rest of the scene seems to be like, oh, we need a practical application of improper numbers or fractions. So why don't we do something on Tool Time, because that would be logical. So the start of it, I would say there's no other explanation besides teacup and D cup rhyming. I don't know.
Yeah, all right, that's what I thought. So they're laying a new floor. Tim notes that he walks the mathematical walk and talks the mathematical talk, and he's kind of dancing around. He's gotten really arrogant about math without really
knowing it.
Yeah, without really knowing any.
With that woodpecker around, he feels like he can do anything.
Yeah, he's peacocking all over the place. They did some math, and apparently Tim did it wrong. I think he didn't multiply. He forgot to multiply the fractions. Like
He didn't measure it. He thought they were round numbers.
Oh, okay.
So he thought it was like 8 by 4 or something, but really it's 8.5 by 4.
Which changes the whole thing. And then instead of it being like 32 square feet, it's like 36 square feet or something, which is not really anything we need to dwell on because it doesn't matter. They're going to scrape off the old floor using a simple scraper, but Tim notes something that's called the dry ice method. Which I don't know if it's a real scene, or if it's a real thing. I know it's a real scene, but
it's definitely happening.
It's a real scene. So Tim goes backstage and very quickly emerges on a bobcat with a bunch of dry ice in the front section. And I don't know if the plan was to like put the dry ice on the floor and it was going to like somehow dissipate or something. What do you think was going to happen?
Yeah, I guess it would loosen it up.
Okay, I don't know.
I'm not sure.
So the bobcat comes out and Tim loses control and he crashes it, and that's kind of how the scene ends. But
he messes up the teacup set.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, full circle. But Tim, it says on IMDb, and 3 out of 3 people found this interesting, so listen up.
We'll see if we're 5 out of 5.
Yeah. Tim Allen later admitted he had momentarily lost control of the bobcat he was driving in the dry ice scene. He wasn't sure as it was happening that he wasn't going to turn over. So evidently his driving there and his kind of, crashing it was legitimate or real to an extent. I don't know. That, according to IMDb, kind of seems made up, but felt like
I don't know about you, but at least 4 out of 4 found that interesting.
Yeah, well, I will. I'm going to share it because there's the share option. That scene ends out in like a lamb, out like a lamb. I would say. I don't know, just a weird scene. It doesn't really do.
I would say out like a bobcat.
Ooh, in like a D cup, out like a bobcat.
All right, so we're at home. Ahead. Tim has... This is where things get really strange, I feel like.
This is my favorite part.
So Tim has added some more power to Mark's toy helicopter, which has like these crazy jaws on the front and stuff. And he did this because the wooden owl got pecked to death. So they reveal what happened to the owl, and it's like pecked in half, basically. Brad comes home. He got a C. Congrats to Brad. And Jill is very happy because he did it on his own. Tim tries to pass on some wisdom to Brad. like usual, he tries to relay about how math teaches order and all this kind of stuff. And Jill says that she taught Brad how to do the compound fractions. And it turns out that Jennifer taught Jill, who taught Brad, because Brad says, "Hey, Jennifer wanted me to let you know that if you need help with compound fractions, she'll help you." So,
yep, that's it. Jill's a liar.
Jill's a liar, which is exactly what Brad tried to do earlier, and it lasted about as long as Brad's lie did. Also, we learned that Jennifer and Brad got back together.
She should have dumped him. I mean, I don't know. What is she? Have some respect for yourself. Why, she's just going back to the well. Does she think he's going to change? Why would he change based off what's happened?
Yeah, what do you, just because he's going to do his own homework now?
Oh,
is that why?
He's going to get C's on his own. Yeah, do better. Well, I guess she does do better. She never comes back, so.
Must be a short-lived reconciliation, I guess.
It seems like it. This scene ends with Tim. He's going to use the pecker wrecker, which is the small copter, drone-like, you might say. He's going to use it on the bird, so he puts on a helmet, and I didn't really know why he put on the helmet.
We'll see later.
I mean, yeah, but how would you have the foresight? He puts on a helmet.
He was thinking the woodpecker would come and peck him, maybe.
He cranks up that music, which I don't know the name of it, but it's the very famous dun 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 dun. Do you know the name for that?
I don't. I tried to look it up too, and I couldn't figure it out.
It's very, very famous, and I just like the idea of Tim having that, like a CD, or I guess probably back then it would have been a tape of that, just ready to go, primed. Mm-hmm. Favorite scene of the episode here at the end. Really like this. So Tim goes outside. He's wearing like a leather jacket. He's got his helmet on, and he begins to operate the helicopter. And the voiceover work in this scene doesn't like match at all what he's doing. Like it's as obvious as it could possibly be that like he's just doing the voices at a different time, and they're trying to kind of mesh it together, because like his motions just do not work with what he's saying, which was one thing I liked about it. But very quickly the copter goes rogue and just like kind of starts chasing Tim around, and it's supposed to be like a war scene, like I don't know, it might be parodying something like a Vietnam film or something like that, but it quickly just kind of chases him around, and he falls a bunch of times, and he hides behind the fence, and the copter just kind of circles, but it chases him around for a fair amount of time. He runs inside, and he takes off his helmet, and he thinks everything's done, and this is the best part of the episode. The doors open, and the copter zooms in and comes after Tim. As it gets closer, it isn't a helicopter so much as it is a lousy graphic of a helicopter, but then it emerges, and I thought this scene was really funny.
There's implications to the scene that we probably shouldn't really dive too deep in, but he's not controlling this helicopter. Who is?
Oh, it's the age-old fear, man versus machine. I mean, what do we do when technology becomes more intelligent than we are? And I think that this helicopter
is sentient.
Is sentient and more intelligent than Tim, so it just kind of takes over. No, I don't know. I mean,
I was kind of hoping that the woodpecker, the Brad Garrett voice would come on and like pretend that it was like, in control.
Hey Raven, I'm a helicopter. I don't know. I thought this was really funny, even with like the sharp teeth and stuff, just kind of looming. It reminded me of something out of like a Naked Gun movie or something. So I got a kick out of it. It doesn't make any sense, and it's quite stupid. But I more and more I find myself enjoying scenes like this on the show, just because like I don't know, the one-liners and stuff, or like the sexual humor just isn't ever really spectacular. But when they do very, very silly pratfalls like this, I get a kick out of it.
Anytime they're on,
go ahead.
I was going to say, anytime they're like on a, remember that one scene where they were on that snowmobile?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's funny. I also liked in this one how like, so the second Tim goes inside, like they roll like the first, the credits roll, like they do like the created by or whatever, thinking you think the episode's going to be over, but then Tim goes inside and sits down, and the doors open and it continues. So it's they really tried to pull the wool over our eyes, and I was tricked, and I assume you were tricked as well.
Yeah, something like that.
Roll credits, fade to black, bloopers.
Oh, yeah, bloopers, Jill and Randy. Jill laughs when Randy's being sarcastic earlier.
I watched it because it had Randy, and I thought maybe he'd say something funny. He didn't really.
He didn't, no. Jill just couldn't hold it together.
Yes. And that is Bye Birdie. So, Jordan, highs and lows.
Highs and lows.
Start with your highs.
Start with my highs. I didn't quite like the copter scene as much as you did, but that's okay. It wasn't that bad. I like kind of the nemesis in this episode being a woodpecker. It's not Jill. It's not them fighting. It's him against a woodpecker. So I kind of like that juxtaposition. I do like Randy as the puppet master as well in this episode, just messing with Brad and giving him like what he should do, but also reveling when everything gets screwed up. And he really has no ramifications for it, so that's always good too. Other than that, I don't know. The Zdarsky stuff, I still don't know why she would get back with him. I'm sad to see her go. We're never going to hear her say Bradley again, which is just... I'm going to have to go back to old episodes, I guess, if I want to hear that love story rekindled. I don't know. I mean, there wasn't a lot of bad stuff, but there wasn't a lot of great stuff for me in this episode. So I guess it was just pretty average, which is pretty good for this season, I would say, yeah. Unfortunately.
What about lows?
Yeah, I like you mentioned earlier, the tool time scene doesn't make a whole lot of sense at all, and seems very much like a filler scene and not great at all. So that's about it, though.
Okay, yeah. When we do this show, I think the easiest thing to do is just kind of compare it to the episodes you've seen lately. And this episode was just so much better than what we watched last week. I think that I probably liked it more than I should have just as a result of that. Because last week's episode was just so bad, inconsequential.
As I said, one of the worst that we
it was. And this one was probably, for all intents and purposes, average to maybe a little bit above average. But I enjoyed it more as a result. So highs for me, as I noted, that final helicopter scene just... It scratched me right where I itched, and yeah, I think the premise, albeit very silly, like Tim versus the woodpecker, was funny, and they stretched it out over a whole episode to maybe in some ways diminishing returns. We don't really know what happened, but at the very least, like, they gave Tim a nemesis, and he had a couple of different situations where he was trying to work against it. 'Cause sometimes with these episodes, like, they'll do something like that, and then like the bird will like die like 5 minutes in, and then it'll just like be about something completely different. So I structurally and the pacing of this episode was good to me. Like, it made sense. Like, it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, at first he's trying with something, and then he blasts it and uses sound, and he's just So I enjoyed that. The stuff with Brad and Jennifer Zdarsky was so. It was good to have her in there for a final time. I did laugh at some of his like faux conversations with Randy when they're trying to act like Brad said. I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I laughed. I got some good chuckles. Tim putting on the headphones and Randy kind of burning them was good as well. Lows, definitely that tool time scene was just it served no purpose at all, and the D cup teacup thing is not my idea of a good bit. But other than that, yeah, I enjoyed this one. It was fun to watch, like I said, especially in comparison to maybe what we've seen lately.
And it ended on a super high note for you, so that always helps.
Yeah. Ended on a super high note, recording here on 420, so that makes sense.
Oh my goodness. I don't think we have any mail this week, so I guess that brings us to social media, correct?
Let's talk social media, Jordan, yeah.
All right, so feel free to reach out on Facebook.com/Home Impodcast. We're on Twitter at Home Impodcast, our website, thehomeimpodcast.com, where you can contact us. I also wanted to give a shout out. We will be recording the Jungle to Jungle episode coming up on Sunday, so coming up soon here. And if you want to get some of that action, if you want to see us uncut, unfiltered, raw, jungle-esque, unfettered,
loincloth, donning, just dirt in our hair, dirt
sand
everywhere,
in our toes,
just nasty, just filthy,
gnarly. Oh, but also for like people who aren't into that, we'll be good. Like it's not
going to be like
it'll be clean.
Bad. Yeah, it'll be clean.
We're going to give you best of the best of both worlds.
Jordan will keep it. Jordan will be PG. I'll be strong R. And then they'll kind of equal in the middle, PG-13. So great.
Yeah, it averages it out. So as long as you're over 13, I guess you'll be okay. But so if you want to get access to that when it comes out, all you got to do is donate $1 to us. So you can go on our website to the support tab, or you can go to patreon.com/Home Impodcast. Both ways will work. So we'd love to get that to you, and it's going to be a good one.
It's going to be really good. Jordan, in terms of the social media, I want to talk about the poll posted. So the question was this week, and I thought it was really one of the worst questions I've asked. It seemed very, the morning came around and I needed a poll and I didn't have anything spectacular. So I came up with this. How many times have you been married? So asking the question to our listeners, how many times have you been married? And Jordan, shockingly, 21 votes. So I don't know how it happened, but we got 21 votes on this one.
What's the results?
Jordan, the results are jarring. So 0% of our listeners have been married exactly 2 times. So that's not happened. 9% have been married more than 2 times.
Oh.
So that's something like, I guess, 2 out of 21. 29% have been married once, but 62% have not been married. So Jordan, we got a bachelor kind of audience. All the single ladies, all the single men are listening.
We might have to start a Home Impodcast dating site to get these people together.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's true. So we need to stop all of our our marriage humor that we do. I know we do a lot of
You asked me a lot of marriage questions.
Yeah, I gotta stop because apparently that's just not our demographic.
But for the 2 people who have been married twice, more than twice,
they love. Well, they learn. They're learning from it.
So they won't have to deal with it again. That's an interesting poll. I guess you're gonna have to put up more like that. Where it's
I need to ask questions less related to home improvement and more just related to the lives of our listeners. So yeah, next week's going to be something like, have you ever seen a woodpecker? And we'll get 300 votes or something. Very simple. One thing I want to note in terms of iTunes reviews. So we hadn't gotten a review since I don't think I'm spoiling anything here. It's public knowledge. We haven't gotten a review since September. Jordan, what month is it now?
It's April.
It's April. So how many months is that in between?
At least 1 million.
It's been 1 million months since we got an iTunes review. So I'm just saying this right now. Anyone that gives us an iTunes review over the next week, I will sing you a song on the next episode. I will personalize a 10-second riff for anyone that reviews us. It will be at the top of the show or at the end of the show, depending on how we want to do it, and it will be solely for you. So write us a review. I'll sing you a song. It's as simple as that.
Wow. I was thinking maybe we would give those people access to the episode, but I like you singing better.
No, that's too much. No, we need money for that, but I will sing them a song.
So wow, definitely leave us a review. I want to hear what he has to sing. I mean, we've heard that you've done the Elvis impression. I can't wait till you add the vocals to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people feel that way.
Mm-hmm. We'll see if a lot of people feel that way.
I suspect we'll see that they don't. But Jordan, you live free or die hard, right?
Yeah, I can't think of
the week time.
I can't think of anything else that made more sense. I don't know whose turn it is.
I think it's your turn. No,
Dang
it's
it.
mine. It's my turn for sure. All right, Jordan. Question of the week this week is woodpecker. That's not the question. That's
not a question at all.
Woodpecker
question mark?
I'm Ron Burgundy. The woodpecker is in this episode. It's about a woodpecker. Famously, there is Woody the woodpecker. You noted earlier that you watched Pokemon alone in the morning, crying before school.
I still do that.
There was no camaraderie. What are some of your favorite cartoons, or what cartoons did you like growing up or as you got older?
Well, yeah, I mentioned definitely one of those Pokemon's way up there. Recess is up there. I watched a lot of cartoon Disney too. So everything from like Darkwing Duck to DuckTales to Bonkers. Also Digimon was up there. I watched a lot of cartoons.
Digital monsters, Digimon are the champions.
Is that the song you're going to sing to people?
Yeah, I'm just going to put their names in.
Yeah, so those are definitely some of them. Yeah, I would probably put Pokemon up there at the top, though. So anything that was like Mickey Mouse related to, that was a win for me.
Do you watch any cartoons now? Do you like anime?
No, not really. I haven't really watched any cartoons in a while. I did watch a month or two ago Winnie the Pooh's Grand Adventure. So that's a movie. That's close enough, right?
Yeah, that counts. Yeah. All right. Okay, interesting. Well, I mean, also I suppose cartoons are limited to TV shows, but I feel like you're a big Disney head, so I mean, all of those movies are cartoons.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a rabbit hole. Cartoons, much like you, I was a big Recess fan growing up. I watched Pokemon because it was on, but I don't think I had the fondness that you seem to have had for it. In terms of other stuff, I remember being young and watching a lot of like the Bugs Bunny kind of older
Looney Tunes.
Mel Blanc sort of Looney Tunes stuff, and
Yeah,
I enjoyed those
too.
as well. But yeah, I don't know that I was as interested in cartoons as most kids are. I was watching a lot of like Drew Carey show and stuff, like stuff that I thought was like adult.
I watched that before school too sometimes.
Hey, there we go. But I don't know. Now I'm trying to think. South Park. I probably watched more South Park in terms of like cartoons than most cartoons as a young man. So South Park was something I watched in high school, and then of late, I really think that the BoJack Horseman, the Netflix show, and which is a cartoon, I really like that quite a bit. So I've enjoyed that over the last couple of years. But that's really that's different. The adult cartoons I always was kind of skeptical about. I didn't think that they were for me, but I really do enjoy BoJack Horseman. So yeah.
Yeah, I've never watched that one, but yeah, I definitely watched a lot of South Park growing up. You know, my parents wouldn't let me watch The Simpsons, but I don't know if they want.
Isn't that so funny? Because like I think there was a stigma early on about The Simpsons that it was just like not good for children, but then everybody ended up watching South Park, which was so much worse, so much worse. But yeah, that is funny. I do remember there being like a thing where my mom really didn't want me to watch The Simpsons either, and looking back, it's just so much. It's very like clean, kind of innocent in comparison to. But
yeah, I also liked Futurama.
You already had your chance to answer. So.
Sorry. Yeah, you always try to cut me off.
You had your shot. So.
You had your shot. So
next week, Jordan,
maybe that'll be your poll, right? You're gonna put a poll about cartoons next.
Do you watch cartoons? Yes or no? Yeah, that'll be really interesting. Next week, we're covering.
You have no idea what we're covering, so I'll tell you.
I did know. It's called Karate or Not. Here I come. Oh, I love a good karate episode. I'm looking at a still here, and I see Tim.
Don't spoil it.
And a couple of other dads maybe thinking about doing karate, so it's going to be good. And one of the dads is wearing all denim, so I think we're in for a treat next week.
I don't want to get too much into it, but I just looked at the review that Explorer DS left, and it's called Tool On, Tool Off. Like wax on, wax off.
See, I think you didn't like that segment, but I really thought it was funny. I think we may be returning to that sometime in the future. So if you want to hear user reviews again, tweet at us, #I want to hear user reviews. And we'll know.
Or maybe that's your next poll. How about that?
It's possible. That's possible. All right. Well, Jordan, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and listeners, thank you for listening. And I guess I should say take care.
Take care, everybody.